Tonight. So it's hard to pick out one issue that was the most important during last year's elections, but when it comes to the state Senate, Republicans can attribute at least some of their success, particularly in regaining control of all of Long Island, to the MTA payroll tax. Now, the GOP opposed the measure that passed as part of the bailout for the troubled authority in 2009 when Democrats were in control of the chamber, and then several of its candidates ran campaigns pledging to repeal the controversial measure. Now, one of those new Republican senators is trying to make good on his pledge. Long Island Republican Zeldin is preparing to introduce a bill that would repeal this tax, and he joins us now in the studio to talk more about it. How are you? Welcome for the first time to the studio, although you've been on the show before.
It's great to be here.
You had a rally this weekend, correct?
We did, yesterday.
And how many folks showed up to that?
Probably about 75, 100 supporters. Good turnout.
And your bill has been introduced yet, or has your...
Oh, it hasn't. There are various legislative proposals that I've seen on the Senate side, the Assembly side. I think we've reached that point where it's important to coalesce behind one. But you know, at this point, we've been busy with coalition building and fact-finding, and I think we're at that point where we really need to hammer down on a proposal and run with it.
Why was it not included in the budget? Because there were some people who had hoped that it would be there. I would expect that you probably were one of them.
Well, the Senate passed in their one-house budget resolution a couple items as it relates to the MTA payroll tax. We called for a thorough top-down forensic audit.
Yep.
As well as for public and non-public schools, so that they wouldn't have to pay the tax that was repealed with regards to them. And right now, it's we shift to this post-budget time up here in Albany. We start looking towards the end of this year and next year, and where our priorities are and should be. And for me, representing the residents of the 3rd Senate District, this very ill-conceived tax that was passed under the Senate Democrats in 2009. That's something that really should be looked at again.
Yeah, no, the problem is that it creates $1.4 billion worth of revenue for the MTA, which is sort of notoriously difficult in terms of fiscal problems. And in addition, it might actually face a $100 million budget gap this year and $250 million next year. And even Dean Skelos, the majority leader, who is of course on Long Island and feels the pressure from constituents on this issue, says he's not sure that it's going to be able to get done this year.
Well, it's hard to, you can't repeal the MTA tax in a soundbite. And I've had multiple conversations with Senator Skelos. He's been a great ally in all of my efforts to fight for the 3rd Senate District. I don't see him as anything but a partner in getting this done as quickly and as responsibly as possible.
But where would that $1.4 billion come from?
Well, the MTA really needs to get their fiscal house in order. This was a bailout in 2009.
Yep. And
in this era of bailouts from the federal government and the state government, the state shouldn't have jumped in with this payroll tax. The MTA needs to look at themselves. They need to look at real estate consolidations, public-private partnerships. They have to look at reducing more of their overtime costs. Right now, they have one in about every 6.5 employees are managers or supervisors. They need to create their own efficiencies so that they don't need taxpayer-funded bailouts in order to survive.
Actually, and we should just mention to viewers, I mean, we're talking about 12 counties here, that the service area of the MTA, it's not, when we talk about the MTA, a lot of people think that it's just New York City. You obviously are from Long Island, not New York City. And in addition, the suburbs that are north of the MTA also are impacted by this payroll tax. And it's sort of like a reverse commuter tax, isn't it?
It's a terrible tax, and it affects everyone in multiple ways. Whether you're a business, a hospital, local government, non-for-profit, schools, everyone's getting hit by this tax. The further you get away from New York City, the less and less amount of the people that are paying the tax actually use the resource. So the expansion of this tax all the way out to where my district is out in Suffolk County was a really bad idea, and that's why I would have never voted for it in the first place.
So is there anything, for example, $1.4 billion is a lot of money, and maybe overtime could eat into that. Maybe they could sell some of their assets, which is something else that the authorities talked about. Maybe they would do a forensic audit and top to bottom and would find, I don't know, whatever, the couple $1 million, but that's still not going to replace 1.4.
Well, I'm confident that the MTA would be able to save more than $1.4 billion if they really got their house in order. Right now, it's a tough economy, and everyone's tightening their belt. The state's tightening their belt. We just closed a $10 billion deficit. The following year, we were going to have a $15 billion deficit right now, which is just 2. The federal government, the deadlock is really the Republicans and Democrats in Washington trying to figure out how to get our nation's fiscal house in order. The MTA needs to jump on board and figure out how to tighten their own belt.
What about the governor? Have you spoken to the governor or the second floor about this at all?
Well, the governor, I believe, is going to be an ally as well. He has indicated that he's not supportive of the MTA payroll tax. I don't know where he stands at this particular point as we have this interview on April 11th.
Right.
But he would be a great partner as well.
Well, I think he said he's open to it, but the problem is replacing the revenue on the back end, right? I mean, that's always the problem, and this has not been, I want to preface this by saying that it has not been supported or suggested or floated anywhere. I'm just going to ask you, what if you brought back the millionaire's tax? I mean, that is a question that people have said. The Speaker of the Assembly has suggested that a true millionaire's tax, if you will, taxing people who actually make $1 million as the threshold, could be used to fund, he wants education, but why not for this?
Yeah, you know, one of the problems with the millionaire's tax, just like the MTA tax on Long Island, I mean, we have the worst business climate in the entire country right here in New York State. On Long Island, you already have the highest energy costs, the highest property taxes, the highest insurance costs, the highest overhead for salaries. You have the millionaire's tax right now.
Yeah.
You have the MTA
until the end of
payroll
December,
tax.
sure.
Right, and any particular item, if you want to address it to improve the business climate, to keep businesses on Long Island in New York State, everything's going to come with conflict and controversy. But we have to get people working again. I ran on a platform of cutting taxes, cutting spending, private sector job growth. You can't have private sector job growth. You can't improve our economy without addressing some of these controversial issues to get our economy working again.
So do you have some sponsors in the Assembly, Democrats? Because if you don't have somebody in the majority on the other side, you're never going to get anywhere, of course.
Yeah, we're going to need the support of the Assembly and Speaker Silver. I hope that he is going to be engaged and cooperative and supportive. I really welcome anyone, Republican or Democrat. This isn't a partisan issue. It was created in 2009 when we happened to have a New York City-centric leadership up in Albany, and at this point, the legislature has changed. And hopefully Speaker Silver will be supportive of our efforts, because we can't do it without him.
It's also like the subject of a lawsuit. I mean, it's enormously unpopular, and there are various different local county legislators that are controlled by Republicans or Democrats who have signed on to a lawsuit or to any number of legal actions that challenge this. So again, it's not a partisan issue. I want to just ask you something that is completely out of left field. There was a report over the weekend that Rick Lazio might run for county executive in your county, if I'm not mistaken. I just wonder what your thought is about that.
Oh, I'm a big fan of Rick. I've known him a long time, and he was probably the first elected official when I ran for Congress in 2008 who opened up his home, brought me in, and gave me some of the initial early advice for that race. And he's someone that I consider a friend.
Have you talked to him about it? It just seems so far
I
out of left field. I read it in
haven't.
Newsday, and I thought, wow, from governor to county executive. All right.
I saw him on Thursday. I was at the Suffolk County Conservative Party dinner. He was there, and we'll see. The screenings for county executive are going to start this Thursday down in Suffolk. We'll find out who the candidates are, and I'm looking forward to rallying behind the best person.
You know, when you show up at a local conservative dinner, it's generally because you're interested in hitting the hustings. I'm just saying, not yourself, but, you know, if Rick Lazio was there, and that's where he's strongest, right? That's his former hustings when he was there, when he represented Congress. So
yeah, he really is a great guy. I wish him nothing but the best of luck, and if he pursues it, that's great for him.
Well, Senator Zeldin, I want to thank you very much. Sorry about that one. That's a little local politics thrown in at the end of this MTA-related interview. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I was like, what?